everybody, welcome to Grimsforge Gaming. Today we're going to cover my Frostfangs build. This is my Werewolf build that I've been playing on, and we're going to jump right into the build. So the first set that we are running is Eternal Vigor, and Eternal Vigor is a heavy armor set. You can get this from Greymore, and it's probably a best in slot for a lot of builds right now. You can see a lot of content creators really kind of gravitating towards this armor set. And I did just release a Necromancer health regen build, 5k health regen tank build, and it was using this set. But anyways, we are not a health regen build tank on this build. We are actually a damage dealer and werewolf, and we can do a lot of damage. Um, Anyways, Eternal Vigor, and the most important thing on it is you can see all the recoveries, and then it's got a max health as a 5-piece, and then the other 5-piece adds 325 stamina and magicka recovery while your health is above 50%, and then it adds an extra 976 health recovery while your health is below 50%. And I had talked about this before with my Necromancer and some of my other builds that I had said that health recovery makes you feel more tanky, and a lot of other content creators agree with me that health recovery does make you feel more tanky. And the reason being, somebody actually in one of my posts or one of my videos said health recovery does not make you feel more tanky, and that's just simply not true. The reason being is if you invest in resistances, they help offset damage, incoming damage, right? They help make incoming damage less. If you invest in health recovery, it offsets the damage. Okay? And so when you got 2,500 health recovery coming in every 2 seconds, they're going to need to outdamage that health recovery, right? Or they're not going to make ground on you. And so health recovery does in fact make you feel more tanky if you invest in it, the same way investing in resistances. So anyways, our first set that we are running is Eternal Vigor. The second set that we are running is Shacklebreaker. Shacklebreaker is kind of a reoccurring theme for me for builds that require both a lot of magicka and a lot of stamina. And stamina wardens require both a lot of magicka and a lot of stamina. And for werewolf builds, because your primary heal is based off magic, you need a lot of magicka to pump out that heal a lot, right? And so we're running Shacklebreaker with 2 infused weapon damage, and then right next to it you can see we are running the Torque of Tonal Constancy. And the Torque of Tonal Constancy is great for werewolves, especially werewolves that want to stay in the fight. And if you look at it, while your stamina is less than 50%, increase your magic recovery by 450. And while your magic is less than 50%, increase your stamina recovery by 450. And I'm going to pull up an image of our stats here. You can look that while the torque is active, it's very hard to actually emulate this process. I could dodge, roll around a whole bunch, and use a bunch of magicka, and then by the time I get to my character sheet and pull it up, it's usually gone. But anyways, here's a picture of the torque on, and you can see that we've got 2,216 magic recovery, 1,360 health recovery, 2,283 stamina recovery, and then you can see that our health recovery, when we fall under 50% health, and that 5-piece of your Eternal Hunt or Eternal Vigor, I'm sorry, kicks in, our health recovery goes from 1360 all the way up to 2330. And so that's just huge. Every one of our recoveries is over 2200, 2216 magicka, 2,330 health recovery, and 2,283 stamina recovery. And so some people might say, man, that's really over sustaining. But it's really not over sustaining when we're talking about fighting outnumbered. When you are fighting outnumbered, your stamina is going to be below 50% often because you're doing work, right? And in that moment, your health or magic recovery is getting boosted, and that's great because you're going to need to pump out heals too if you're really being pressured like that. So when you are fighting outnumbered, this build is built for 1vxing, fighting outnumbered and having to withstand a lot of incoming damage, be able to heal through it, and then turn around and be able to put out damage as well. And so the torque of tonal constancy. Now, the way this works, when you add a mythic item to a build, it kind of breaks up a 5-piece. So I'm not actually able to run a full monster set right here. So we've got a Shacklebreaker heavy helm. Right now we are a 6 heavy, 1 medium. Little odd, I know, and we'll explain why. But anyways, you'll break up your monster set. And so what we've got here is we've got Shacklebreaker weapons, Shacklebreaker jewelry, and then a Shacklebreaker helm. And then we've got our Eternal Vigor. And something also to note about our Eternal Vigor is the fact that the traits on it are not right. So we still need to transmute some stuff, but even with the traits not being right, this build is so strong. So strong. And Werewolf right now is really strong. Anyways, some people will say that we're over sustaining on the build, but we have the weapon damage to kill people as well. And when we look at the stats, we'll jump into that and explain why. But I am running Werewolf on my Sword and Board bar. It's important to know that when you transform from Sword and Board to Werewolf, you'll gain 3k resistances when you do that. And so that's great. We're near resistance cap in Werewolf form, and we'll pull up here shortly an image so you can see everything. And we're running two-hander. Both are Nirnhoned. Our two-hand maul is Nirnhoned, and our one-hand is Nirnhoned that we're on our Werewolf. So the two-hander, when we're on our two-hand bar, we have, when we're fully buffed up, we have 7,100 penetration, which isn't too bad. And we've got about 4k weapon damage. And some people might laugh and say, dude, you can't kill people with 4k weapon damage, because there's this big misconception that you need 5 to 6 to 7k weapon damage to kill people. 5 to 7k weapon damage does kill people, yes, but you don't need that much weapon damage. You need to be alive. You need to sustain, and you need to stay in the fight in outnumbered situations. And so what I found was that 5k weapon or 4k weapon damage was kind of the sweet spot that I could still kill people, especially when you look at the tooltips. That's a 13k dizzy swing. It's over a 15k sub assault. 17k Dawnbreaker with another 17 over 6 seconds. If you can't line up kills with that with 4k weapon damage, it's not a build problem, it's a rotation problem, or you're not putting yourself in the right position to succeed. And so, anyways, I haven't had a problem killing people on my two-hand bar with only 4k weapon damage and just ridiculous crazy tankiness and sustain. I can fight outnumbered 1vx in my build without being in Werewolf. When we go into Werewolf form, we're next level hard to kill. And so anyways, that was something I wanted to talk about, was that you don't need to run with Torco-Tonal Constancy. If you look at our build right now, we have a very low weapon critical rating at 20%. I can tell you when we do crit people, hits really hard. But if you want to run a more aggressive version of this, I promise you, stick with Eternal Vigor, okay? And I promise you, stick with Shacklebreaker, okay? And then just take off your Torque of Tonal Constancy and put a Shacklebreaker infused necklace here, and remove this ring and put Malakath's Band of Brutality here. And that's going to increase your damage by 25% across the board. So if you want to run a more aggressive version of this build, you're not going to lose, you're going to lose a little bit of stats because of the triune trait on this, right? And you're going to lose some recoveries while under 50% health. Alright, that's what you're going to lose by switching this. You're going to go from next level sustain to an additional 25% weapon damage across the board by adding the band of Malakath's Band of Brutality. Okay, go that route. I promise you, this is not short on damage. And so when we're talking Werewolf, I'm going to pull up an image here so you guys can actually see what Werewolf looks like. But when we're looking at our Werewolf stats, so our max Magicka in Werewolf is over 20k, and our heal is roughly 5500 cost. Actually, here it is, 5700 cost on our heal. Okay, so that means we can roughly, when you account for our regens, we've roughly got 4 heals in us. Um, and I've seen this heal crit heal me for 12k. It's usually in the 9k range, and it's critted for over 12k. Okay, it's a huge heal. Hircine's Fortitude is the heal that we're running with, and it's got a 17,000 tooltip, and it increases your health and stamina recovery by 5%. And so that's another thing too, is when the torque is active, and we had that 2,216 magicka, the 2,330 health recovery, and the 2,283 stamina recovery. I'm not taking into account the additional 5% from Hircine's Fortitude when we activate that for a heal. So that's an extra 666 recoveries. Okay, so that takes us just under 3k magic and stamina recovery. That's awesome. Um, this portion of the ability scales off your max health, which is important to know. And so your max health is kind of a reoccurring theme. We're going to see that a couple different times on this build. And since we have 34k max health, that's great. But when we're at max health and we use this ability, so let's say our stamina is below 50%, but our magicka is just sitting at full. We can actually hit this ability, and it's basically trading magicka for stamina, because we'll gain 3,000 stamina, and then while slotting to gain major brutality. And that was one of the biggest drawbacks. Excuse me, to werewolves, was that you lost all your buffs when you went into werewolf form, and they've since fixed that. So Hircine's Fortitude is amazing. And so our gap closer, one of the things to talk about, we were talking about when we're outside of werewolf form, we're at about 4k weapon damage. When we're inside werewolf form, our base weapon damage is 4,484. Right here, 4,484. And when we fully buff up in werewolf form, we will get our weapon damage to 5,342. 5,342 weapon damage in a werewolf that has 3k sustain, 34,000 health, and 37,000 max stamina, and near cap resistances. This is just a really fun, tanky, and dangerous build. But anyways, our Brutal Pounce is our gap closer, and we'll use that. It's got a 9,000 tooltip on it, and we'll use that to gap close to a target. If there are multiple targets, you can activate that Pounce again for Brutal Carnage. And he's going to do this like swipe in front of him that doesn't do damage, but however many targets it hit, it does a damage multiplier. And the maximum amount that you can get your weapon damage on this particular build currently, in purple armor and everything else, is 5,342, and that's a lot of weapon damage for a werewolf. Okay, with those type of recoveries and resistances. So anyways, Brutal Pounce is nice, and it's a major buff for us. I'm running Claws of Life because it's got an 11,000, a little over 11,000 tooltip on it. It does an additional 9,500, almost 9,600 disease damage over 10 seconds. So you'll see this, dot ticking away on it, and you are healed for 100% of the damage over time caused. So if you hit multiple targets with Claws of Life, I would say 3 or more, that heal is really nice. One target or less, it's okay. It's basically a little hot that comes in, but if you hit multiple targets, it's going to be a really nice heal over time. And enemies hit by the initial hit are inflicted with the disease status effect. So you get a guaranteed disease status effect out of that, which is going to lower their healing and health recovery. Our Howl of Agony has a tooltip of 14,673, which is higher than our Dizzy Swing. This is basically the Werewolf steroid version of Dizzy Swing, right? We don't have a cast time on it. It's instant. It's got a 2,800 stamina cost, so the stamina cost on it's fairly low. But at 14,673 physical damage, and then enemies who are feared or facing you take another 25% more damage from this ability. So the tooltip on this is pretty impressive. We'll say it's in the 16, 17 range. Actually, let's do the math right now here real quick. Yeah, so it's going to be at 18,341 tooltip. 18,341 tooltip. It is single target, but if you do your Howl of Agony, which is going to cause major fracture to the target, fear them, and do minor maim, and then you hit them with a Howl of Agony, it's got an 18,341 tooltip. That is awesome. Pretty impressive. So, anyways, those are the abilities we're running. Brutal Pounds, Claws of Life, Howl of Agony, and then Hircine's Fortitude is our big boy heal, and it's also a big boy form of sustain, gives us major brutality as well. And then we're running Deafening Roar, so that way we apply major fracture to everyone, stun everyone, and cause minor maim to everyone, so they're doing less damage to us. And it's also important to note that we are a pack leader werewolf, and because we are a pack leader werewolf, when you are looking at werewolf pack leader, transform into a beast, fearing nearby enemies for 3 seconds. While transformed, your maximum stamina is increased by 30%. You take 10% less damage, and you summon 2 dire wolves. You also grant yourself and nearby allies minor courage, increasing their weapon and spell damage by 129. While slotted, your stamina recovery is increased by 15%. And so, on our sword and board bar, our stamina recovery is 15% higher. So, we talked about the gear. Let's look at the stats real quick on buffed. And outside werewolf form, 20,000 max magicka, 31,000 max health, just under 30,000 max stamina. Our base recoveries, magicka is 1,350, health recoveries 1,181, and then our stamina recovery is 1,398. And when you take a potion, and you should have good uptime on your potions, you can see that those all increase by 20%, so that's important to know. Our torque of tonal constancy is not in effect right now, so those fly up even higher. And our crit damage is at 20%, and our base weapon damage is 3,378. We could get that a little higher if we wanted by doing a couple things, but 4,034 is our weapon damage buffed up on our two-hander, and I've been having no problem killing people with that. Like I said, I think it's mostly how your damage lines up on a Warden, right? The sub-assault strips them of the resistances, your D-swing hits them really hard, and your Dawnbreaker, so it's a sub-assault to D-swing to heavy attack to Dawnbreaker. It just flows really well, and it's a lot of damage coming in. And so, do you want to run with 5k weapon damage? By all means do that. 6k, do that, but I haven't had a problem at 4k. So, let's see. So we looked at the stats. We'll look at the abilities here real quick, but 13,000 D-swing, 15,000 sub-assault, and then we talked about the Dawnbreaker, 17, and then another 17. And then on our back bar, 15,000 resolving vigor, and then we're running Arctic Blast, and I think this gets as high as 8,900 health a burst heal, and it's built off magicka. And this actual heal has been more reliable than Rally has right now. Rally's been kind of bugged on different builds and stuff, and but anyways, I run Arctic Blast. I run this on my Kratos build as well, and I like it a lot. When I'm in outnumbered situations, this is a really nice heal also because it's got a burst heal, it's got a hot, and then it does frost damage around you, and it does a like an AOE stun to anyone hit by it for three times, and so that's really nice. We are running Ice Fortress, so we have minor protection while that's up, and we are running Shimmering Shield, so that way we can get our ult gen. You get major heroism. Um, when you absorb a projectile, and so that's really nice against sorcerers and um, snipers. And I was in Cyrodiil earlier. I'll pull up a clip just so you can kind of see fighting three different people or whatever, and one of them was a sorcerer, and they just couldn't, with the healing kit that this thing has, they couldn't put a whole lot of damage into me, and they were all really beefy. They had a designated healer, and then they had a tank, and then they had a sorcerer. I was able to kill the sorcerer, but the two beefy guys, they're just healing each other or whatever. But it was a fun fight nonetheless on a resource, and I'll pull up a clip here while we're talking so you can see that. But anyways, that's what we're running ability wise. You saw the tooltips on it, and then we're going to jump in and we are going to look. We're running the Warrior Mundus for more weapon damage, and we are running Bewitched Sugar Skulls for max stats and additional health recovery. This is very important for the build because you need max magicka, you need max stam, and you need max health, and the health recovery is really nice as well. And we are an orc, if you've noticed, and so we've got additional weapon damage from this passive, some health, and then when you use a weapon ability you gain health and then additional stamina there. So orc's pretty nice. If you were a Nord on this build, you would definitely be at resistance caps, and you'd be sitting a little better. Like unbuffed, I'm at 20,000, so when we buff up, on our sword and board, we're at 29,000, and on our two-hander, we are at 26,000. I can tell you that feels okay, even in outnumbered situations, and it's basically because of the kit that Warden brings to the table. So, changes to make, we already talked about that. I would just drop out the Torque-Tonal Constancy if you feel like you're over-sustaining. Put in Shacklebreaker Neckpiece and put in Malakath's Band of Brutality and gain an extra 25% damage. And I would stick with these two sets. I've tested a lot of different things. On a stamina Warden that is a werewolf, Eternal Vigor and Shacklebreaker is the play. It just is so much stats and so much sustain, and you have damage. I promise you have damage. Anyways, it's been a lot of fun. Let's see. CP, let's jump into that and finish it up. I have no clue why I have 1 point into Blessed, and we're not going to fix it right now, but act like you saw nothing. Act like you didn't even see that. Go over to Mastered Arms. We got 61 points into that, and increases our direct damage by 21%, which is almost everything we do. Dizzy Swing, Crushing, Dizzy, Dizzy Swing, Sub Assault, our Dawnbreaker, just everything we do is going to be that. Our physical weapon expert, we have 63 points for an extra 30% damage, and you see right there at the end it says as well as werewolf form. So your light and heavy attacks are going to do 30% more damage by investing points there. It's important. Mighty, we've got 64 points into that, and so that gives us an extra 13% of physical, poison, and disease damage done. We do almost all of that. Piercing, we've got an extra 20 points there for 1900 penetration, and we got 61 points into precise strikes for critical damage. Now I tell you, if you run with the Band of Malakath, I would still keep points into this, because while you cannot do crit damage, your critical healing is still a factor, and you want those big fat juicy heals when you're on your werewolf killing everyone. 61 points in Ironclad. All the biggest hitting abilities in the game are usually going to be direct damage attacks, and this cuts that attack by 21%. 61 points into Spell Shield. It gives us an extra 4,400 spell resistance. 28 points into Critical Resistance for next almost 800 crit resistance. I have no points into Hardy or Elemental Defender, and I do this on almost all my builds. We'll explain why here shortly. I've got 60 points in Heavy Armor Focus for an extra 4,400 physical resistance, and 60 points into Healing Received or Quick Recovery. Anyways, no matter what build I'm doing, I always run whatever I'm running at least 5 pieces in, whether it be heavy, light, or medium. I always put 60 points into the armor focus of that. A lot of people put heavy points into Hardy or Elemental Defender, and because they want, especially because they want to get to the Unchained passive. When you use a break free, the cost of your next stamina ability used within 5 seconds is reduced by 80%, and that ability usually is going to be a vigor, right, for a big heal or a rally. Okay, so you're going to save yourself 80% of that heal to recover from the stun on the CC break or whatever. I don't care about that. I don't care about building this around that moment where I need to break free and heal myself. I have more than enough sustain on this build and heals on a lot of my builds the way I build them. But the way it breaks down is if you were to put points into this and say cut 10% off all physical damage coming in, it's the really big hits that you have to worry about. So say there's a 10,000 damage ability that's going to hit you. You know, you invest heavy into this and it's going to shave off 10% of that. It's going to cut off 1,000 damage off that 10,000 hit. You saved yourself 1,000 damage. But if I can put 60 points into heavy armor focus, I just increased my physical resistance by 4,400. 4,400. And so a lot of people look at my build and they're like, how in the heck are you running such high resistances? I can't even get anywhere close to that. Well, it's probably because your CP is invested into Hardy and Elemental Defender, so you can get Unchained, which a lot of content creators do, and I don't do that. I put heavy armor focus and I put Spell Shield. Now, if you just happen to be a Nord as well, not only will you get the 4,400 from Spell Shield, but Nords have a rugged passive, racial passive, and they get an extra 4,000 resistances. And so if you were to assign your points like I have here and be a Nord, that's an 8,000 resistance swing. 8,000 resistance swing or increase. And so, anyways, oh, there we go. Emperor's changing. So, no points into that, and heavy into heavy armor focus. Moving on. 1 point in the Siphoner, we're giving them one extra thing to cleanse. 37 points into Warlord. We are going to be CC'd, and we will need to break free, so we want to cut that cost. 60 points into Mooncalf, and I think this tree is not optimized, which is no big deal, but build close to this and you're going to be fine. But I have 60 points into Mooncalf. Technically, I think 64 would put us at the 13%, so an extra 4 points there from somewhere would be great. 57 points into Arcanist, and this is very important for a Werewolf and very important for a Stamina Warden, because half of our abilities are magic abilities. This makes us go. And if you want access to your major expedition, your bird of prey, you need to have adequate magic recovery. Tenacity, we have some points in tenacity because you are so light and heavy attack centric on your werewolf, and then we've got 35 points into health recovery to really boost that health recovery once we start getting below 50%, and so that works out really well. 50 points into tumbling, not optimized. You would technically want to put a couple more points into this to get you at the 19% threshold, but that's fine. We are definitely more tumbling oriented on this build and not block casting, and especially in Werewolf, you're not going to stand there and just hold block. And if you've ever dodge rolled on a werewolf, it more looks like a stutter step or a juke. And so that's the play to avoid a lot of damage. Like a crystal frag is coming in, you see them hard casting it for whatever reason. Just hit a dodge roll or a tumble, and he'll basically just juke. And you could even do this towards them, and they might not, they don't understand why their crystal frag just missed you, but just kind of an example. But that is the CP, and this build is very durable, very tanky, and it can do the damage. And if you think that you can't kill people with 4K weapon damage, it's not the build, it's you. You just need to figure out your rotation and how to line up the damage a little better, or you're putting yourself in situations that you're not ready for just yet. All part of the natural maturation process. And then, like I said, in werewolf form, not only do we have all those crazy sustains, recoveries, and everything else, but in werewolf form, we can get our weapon damage up to 5,342 when we're fully buffed. So over 5k weapon damage werewolf with max resistances and over 2k recoveries across the board. This is a really greasy werewolf build. A buddy, Kirchhoff, every time he runs into a werewolf, that's what he says, why is this guy running a greasy werewolf build? They are totally greasy right now, but it's a lot of fun, and you guys need to try it. So, all right, thanks, and be safe out there. Bye.